Director Robert Mueller issued a memorandum to all FBI employees urging them to report wrongdoing, misconduct, or any other behavior within the FBI that could hamper the Bureau's efforts to battle terrorism. And he offered his personal assurance that retaliation against any FBI whistleblower would not be tolerated. But in the case of one FBI whistleblower who appeared on 60 Minutes 3 weeks ago, Mueller's orders seem to have been ignored. Special Agent John Roberts says he was threatened, intimidated, and humiliated for exposing what he said has become a pattern of misconduct at the highest levels of the FBI that has gone unpunished. Here's what he told us that got him into so much hot water.
I don't know of another person in the FBI who has done the internal investigations that I have and has seen what I have and that knows what has occurred and what has been glossed over and what has frankly just disappeared, just vaporized, and no one disciplined for it.
What disturbs Agent John Roberts is a double standard of discipline at the Bureau in which he says senior officials are rarely punished and often promoted, while lower-level employees end up taking the blame. And FBI Agent Roberts knows. He is a chief of the Bureau's Internal Affairs Department and for the past 10 years has investigated and documented hundreds of cases of wrongdoing by FBI employees. And as he told us in the story we did several weeks ago about misconduct in the FBI's translation department, he doubts that double standard will ever change.
I think the double standard of discipline will continue. No matter who comes in, no matter who tries to change, you have a certain group that will continue to protect itself. That's just how it is.
No matter what happens?
I would say no matter what happens.
Have you found cases since 9/11 where people were involved in misconduct and were not, let alone reprimanded, but were even promoted?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That's astonishing.
Why?
Because you would think that after 9/11, that's a big slap on the face. Hello, this is a wake-up call here.
Depends on who you are. If you're in the senior executive level, it may not hurt you. You will be promoted.
What happened to John Roberts after he told us that may be the beginning of the end of his 20 years at the FBI. Roberts says he was called into a meeting in the office of his boss, Assistant FBI Director Robert Jordan, and was read the Riot Act for what he had said on 60 Minutes, even though the FBI had given Roberts written approval to talk to us about his criticism of the Bureau. According to investigators familiar with that meeting, Assistant Director Jordan told Roberts, quote, "You dissed me and the director." Jordan later went on to suggest that Roberts might be transferred or fired. The way that Roberts was treated quickly got the attention of Democratic Senator Patrick Leahy and Republican Charles Grassley, who sit on the Judiciary Committee, which has oversight of the FBI. Earlier this year, Director Mueller testified before that committee that retaliation against FBI employees who report wrongdoing would not happen on his watch.
I issued a memorandum on November 7th reaffirming the protections that are afforded whistleblowers, in which I indicated I will not tolerate reprisals or intimidation by any Bureau employee against those.
Now, Senator Grassley is trying to hold the FBI director to his word. When you look at what's happened to John Roberts after he criticized the organization, what do you make of the pledges by Director Mueller?
It seems to me that Director Mueller has acknowledged the importance of whistleblowing, and he's got to step in then. And if he doesn't, then I think he's gone back on his word to the Congress of the United States that whistleblowers need to be protected. Because for sure, Roberts has not been protected. No, you don't put domesticated animals through what Mr. Roberts went through. We want to make sure that...
Senator Grassley, Senator Leahy, and their staffs are leading a bipartisan congressional investigation into the FBI's treatment of John Roberts.
You heard everything that Jordan said and other people were saying.
In effect, they sought to end his career. And keep in mind, we're not talking about some rookie FBI agent. We're talking about a person whose life was the FBI, who is the epitome of what you want in law enforcement, and to be treated like this, It seemed to me that they were sending a signal throughout the FBI, you dare question something, you're going to get clobbered.
John Roberts, who spoke freely a few weeks ago, would not speak to us this week because his lawyer, Steve Cohn, says he is too afraid.
As John would say, his legs have been cut off. His authority as a supervisor has been taken away.
Cohn says Roberts was humiliated by Assistant Director Jordan in front of some 40 people, including Roberts' wife Brenda, who works in the same department. According to some who were present, Jordan read sarcastically from a transcript of the 60 Minutes report and said that John Roberts had betrayed everyone at the FBI.
The assistant director got up there and said, we're a family, and we have to understand that if we say harmful things to the family, we're all hurt. Then that was the message to everybody. It was that John Roberts violated the trust of the family.
You don't tell on your own.
Correct.
The FBI is not family. The FBI is a government agency. The agents are employees. You know, the mafia used to talk about being family. The FBI is not mafia, at least they're not supposed to be. But you get the impression that that sort of peer pressure is what you have to be, and you don't mess with the family.
All of this was particularly hard on Roberts' wife, who broke down and required medical assistance after Jordan addressed the staff.
Her husband was ridiculed in front of every co-employee, all the subordinates, all the support staff, and she is totally traumatized. Some of the coworkers won't look at her anymore. They won't return greetings. Essentially, they've been vilified, and she feels it.
Just think of how macho it is for a guy like Jordan to stand up before a group and say those things. You know, you might need that sort of macho when you're going after bank robbers and terrorists and bin Laden, but you don't have to do that to the spouse of a very patriotic FBI agent.
Earlier this week, Senator Grassley summoned Assistant Director Robert Jordan to his office demanding an explanation, but he never got one.
They would not answer my questions.
Why?
They would not answer the questions I was told by counsel for Mr. Jordan because he was very nervous because 60 Minutes was sitting outside of my office. I made very clear that if 60 Minutes was a problem, that I would not speak to 60 Minutes because I was here to get basic information.
Let me ask you if you think that the fact that 60 Minutes was outside your offices prevented the meeting from taking place.
My suspicion is that he didn't want to talk to me in the first place.
Jordan ducked out a side door and headed down the street.
Mr. Jordan, may I ask you a couple questions?
Not right now, sir.
I'd like to talk to you about the allegations that you intimidated, threatened John Roberts. How could I make arrangements to do that, to find out if it's true or not?
We have a press office.
And you will be available through the press office?
Ask them.
We went to the FBI's press office and were told Robert Jordan would not be available for an interview. We asked if we could speak to Director Robert Mueller, but were told that he too was unavailable. The Bureau did send us a written statement saying the FBI is committed to fairness in the workplace and does not tolerate retaliation of any kind. It went on to say, we have asked the Department of Justice Inspector General to expeditiously investigate this matter and welcome his findings. If at that time any action is appropriate, we will not hesitate to take it. This was not the first time that John Roberts had gotten into trouble for criticizing the FBI. He says 3 years ago he was called on the carpet because of a high-profile investigation he conducted into the FBI's handling of the 1992 siege at Ruby Ridge, Idaho, where the wife of white supremacist Randy Weaver was killed by an FBI sniper as she stood inside her home. Roberts concluded that 6 senior FBI officials had lied or committed misconduct in their handling of the case. Despite his findings, none of them were disciplined. The only people punished were subordinate Bureau employees. Roberts testified about that last year at a congressional hearing.
What occurred during the Ruby Ridge investigation
should not be viewed as an isolated incident. This should be alarming to all of us because not only is it fundamentally unfair, but more important, if the rank and file of any law enforcement organization believe that their executive management condones or approves of misconduct, that is a precursor for corruption.
John Roberts told us a few weeks ago that because he exposed misconduct in the executive ranks of the FBI at Ruby Ridge and other incidents, he's been badgered by the very people he was assigned to investigate.
I received a call from one of those senior executives who in fact asked me, do you realize, meaning me, John Roberts, do I realize what I'm doing to the senior executive ranks of the FBI? I was shocked. And my response was, I'm not doing anything. I'm merely conducting an investigation of those who have done something wrong.
And because of that, he says, his career is at a dead end. How many times in your career do you think you've been passed over for transfer or promotion?
I would say 14 times.
14 times?
Yes, sir.
Transfers turned out?
I've been denied that. And the persons making those decisions are the individuals against whom I alleged and investigated misconduct.
What kind of message is being sent to officials like you at the FBI?
Where are your loyalties? If they're to the person that can advance your career, then you will be loyal if you want to move on. If you want to take a stand and say, hey, enough's enough, this is wrong, we can't continue to operate this way, then they're doomed.
As for the senior FBI officials who John Roberts found had committed misconduct at Ruby Ridge, all of them were promoted and in some cases given bonuses. One of them is Van Harp. Even though Roberts said Harp altered a report in order to cover up serious wrongdoing, Harp was promoted and awarded a bonus of $22,000. Van Harp now runs the FBI's Washington field office and is heading the anthrax investigation. The FBI itself says Van Harp did nothing wrong at Ruby Ridge. But just last week, the Inspector General of the Justice Department released a report that endorsed John Roberts' findings about the FBI's handling of Ruby Ridge and his criticism of Harp. The Inspector General's report said the FBI's handling of the incident was rife with misconduct, obstruction, and was at best grossly deficient, and at worst intentionally slanted to protect the FBI and senior FBI officials. The report concludes that the FBI suffered and still suffers from a strong perception that a double standard exists within the FBI.
John Roberts has been vindicated, but then you have to ask, of course, the obvious question. If he was vindicated, why all this retaliation against him, against his wife? Why this effort to hold him up to ridicule? And this is what it comes down to. This effort to send a signal, not just here in Washington, but in California and in Texas, Illinois, everywhere else where the FBI are, send a signal, don't blow the whistle. Don't be a whistleblower.